Today we are reading Flashback 4, The Lincoln Project by Dan Gutman. Chapter 5. The Smartest Smartboard. The receptionist, Miss Vader, knocked on the door and brought in a small platter full of cookies, little cakes, and other treats. She poured a cup of tea for Miss C and set the platter down on her desk. Then she left the room. "We don't know you," David said, eyeing the platter suspiciously. "Why should we trust you? Because you gave us $20 and some sweet treats?" "You shouldn't trust me," Missy admitted, taking a cookie. "It's good that you don't trust me. That shows that you're smart. I could be anybody, but I'm not anybody." "Yeah, well, you're a super rich lady," said Julia, picking up a brownie and taking a bite. "That doesn't mean we should trust you more than any stranger we meet on the street." When Julia didn't topple over dead, the others took treats off the platter. "So what's the big adventure?" Isabel asked, nibbling on a pastry. "Is it dangerous?" asked Julia. "It could be," Missy replied. "I won't lie to you." "Will we have to do anything illegal?" David asked. "Definitely not," Missy replied. "I would never ask you to break the law." "I need some more details before I commit to anything," said Luke. "Smart boy," said Missy. "I'm glad I chose you for." Here's what I want to know," David asked. "What is in it for us? Do we get paid?" "Paid?" Miss C looked hurt. "For an adventure of a lifetime? You should pay me." "Well, what's in it for you?" David asked. "Money, right?" "Young man, money is the least of my concerns," Miss C said, looking David in the eye. "Believe me, I have achieved my financial goals many times over." "Look, I'm not in the mood for guessing games," Luke said, getting to his feet. "What's the big adventure? Tell me right now or I walk." Okay, Missy said as she put down her teacup, and pulled her wheelchair back from the desk. She rolled over to the smartboard on the other side of the room, admiring it for a moment. David, Isabel, Julia, and Luke turned to her face. They had been wondering why a wealthy businesswoman would have a smartboard in her office. "When I was a kid, we had a plain old blackboard in school," Missy said. "The teacher would write on the board with chalk. Do you even know what chalk is?" "Yeah," Julia replied. "When I was little, I would draw pictures with it on the sidewalk." "At some point," continued Missy, "they got rid of those old blackboards and then replaced them with whiteboards. You'd write on them with erasable markers. No chalk dust, no mess. And now, of course, a lot of schools have replaced their whiteboards with smartboards, which interface a computer and a projector. You can type on the computer, draw pictures, go online, interact with the board like a computer screen." Yeah, we know all that," Luke said. "So?" "Well," said Miss C, "now we have this." She gazed into the board again, almost lovingly. It looks like any smartboard," said David. "But it's not like any smartboard," said Miss C. "It's a smarter board. I simply call it the board. It makes a regular smartboard look like a dumb board. In fact, I'd go just as far to say it's the smartest smartboard in the world. I've spent the last 10 years of my life perfecting this technology, and I spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it. If it were to fall into the wrong hands, it could be used for a number of nefarious purposes." Isabel looked up the word nefarious on her smartphone. "What does it do?" David asked. "I'm sure you kids understand that we're surrounded by invisible fields of force at all times, like TV and radio signals. They move through the air in waves. Microwaves, too," added Luke. "Right," said Miss C. "And I'm sure you realize that the Earth turns around. We're constantly in motion. Even though it seems like we're in one place, we're all moving faster than a jet plane right now. What you may not know is that light travels at a constant speed of 186,000 miles per second, Missy explained. "It's sort of like a cosmic speed limit, which we call the speed of light. It works out to about 671 million miles per hour. "Your point?" asked Luke. "Think about it," said Miss C. "The moon is about 240,000 miles away from Earth, so when you look out the window and see the moon, you're not seeing the moon as it is now. You're seeing the moon as it is a little over a second ago. In a way, you've traveled through time." "Slow down," David said. "Are you telling us you've built yourself a time machine?" "You might say that, yes," replied Miss C. "I'm not very good at explaining this stuff in simple terms. I know what you're thinking, reader. Either Miss C is some kind of genius, or this is some kind of prank. Well, I won't keep you in suspense. She's a genius." You've turned a smartboard into a machine that can send people through time? Asked Isabel, incredulous. That sums it up nicely. Oh, come on, Luke said. That's bull. That's science fiction stuff. I can understand why you would say that, Luke, Miss C said. It seems too fantastic to be true. But remember, robots were the stuff of science fiction before we figured out... Sorry about that. Let's see, Okay, let's continue. That seems too fantastic to be true. But remember, robots were the stuff of science fiction before we figured out how to build them. Space travel was science fiction before we figured out how to do it. Just about any advanced technology was science fiction before it became reality. And you figured out how to do this? Asked Luke. Look, replied Miss C, if a human being could move at the speed of light, any number of paradoxes would become possible. Space-time is warped by the gravity of a black hole. For instance, if you fell into a black hole, you would appear at another place and time in the universe. Einstein said nobody can travel faster than the speed of light, but space can stretch, shrink, or be deformed. And when that happens, time is deformed too. Space and time are two aspects of the same thing. Space, time. It can deform enough to carry you anywhere at any speed. Black holes are tunnels through the universe. Am I making any sense at all? So you can send somebody into a black hole? Asked Isabel. I don't buy it, David said, shaking his head. That's crazy. Still sounds like a lot of mumbo-jumbo to me, said Luke. Look, I can spend the next hour explaining the nuts and bolts of this technology, said Miss C, told the group. But I have a better idea. David, let's assume for a moment that I've created a time machine, and you could use it to travel back to any date and place in history. Where would you go? David thought it over for a minute. Any time in history, he finally said. I'd go back to the day Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in a single NBA game. It would be cool to see that. 100 points in one game? Asked Luke. Now that's crazy. I know that Michael Jordan's high game was 69 points, and that was only because the game went into overtime. It happened, David insisted. My dad told me about it. He doesn't lie. Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points, and it wasn't in overtime. All of the things in history to witness, that's what you choose? Asked Julia. Who cares about some silly basketball game? I care, David said. What would you do? Travel back to witness the opening of the first Abercrombie & Fitch store? Julia looked hurt. Please don't argue, children, said Miss C, as she rolled over to her computer. I specifically matched you four up because I thought you would get along. David, when was the basketball game exactly? I don't know, David replied. Before I was born. 1960s, I think? Isabel looked it up on her smartphone. It only took a few seconds for her to get the answer. It was March 2nd, 1962, she said. The game took place at the Hershey Sports Arena in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Isabel, said Miss C. David, would you mind going over there and standing in front of the board, please? What are you going to do to me? He asked nervously. Zap me with laser beams? No, I'm going to send you to the Hershey Sports Arena on March 2nd, 1962. That's nuts, David insisted, still sitting in his chair. Well, if it's nuts, then it won't work, right? Asked Miss C. Nothing will happen. I'll look like a fool, so you'll have nothing to lose. Would you just go stand over there in front of the board for a moment? Go ahead, Luke said. Do it, dude. It will be funny. David got up reluctantly and stood in front of the board. Closer, please, said Miss C. Your body must be within 2 feet of the surface. This is whack, David said, and moved closer to the board. Have fun, David, said Isabel. Yeah, nice knowing you, said Julia. Okay, said Miss C. She typed something in her computer. Are you ready, David? Yeah, ready for nothing, he replied. Miss C typed a few more commands and hit the enter key. There was a brief buzzing sound, and then the screen of the board lit up. 5 bands of color appeared, and then after a few seconds, they merged together to form one band of intense white light. It appeared to stretch out in the wave and away from the surface of the board until it reached David. He put up one hand to shield his eyes. What's going on? He asked. It's so bright. You'll see in a moment, said Miss C. Better close your eyes. Is he okay? Asked Julia, frightened. We were circumventing the First Amendment of reality, shouted an excited Miss C. The laws of physics now make it possible to warp the matter and energy of the observable universe. Light, time, and space are combined in a whirling magnetic field. There is an intense humming sound and a low frequency rumbling like a diesel engine idling. David appeared to be flickering like the image on the television screen just before a power outage. He was clicking on and off. "What's happening to him?" asked Isabel, alarmed. "Stop it," shouted Julia. "Turn it off. What the—" And with that, David was gone.